Mobile hunters, are you looking to make the move to saddle hunting this year? Or maybe you just want to add a few new pieces of gear or upgrade your current saddle gear? If that's the case, then head over to tetherednation.com where they've got all mobile hunters covered. Whether you're new to saddle hunting or an old timer, Tethered is your one-stop saddle shop. From saddles to ropes, sticks, ascenders, whatever it is you need, they have you covered. I've personally been using their gear for the past 3 seasons now. My base setup consists of the Phantom saddle and the Predator platform. And if you're wondering why I've chosen to use their gear above all else, here's the cliff notes. They're innovative and pushing the mobile hunting forward overall. They cut no corners and prioritize the safety and performance of their gear. They care about the community that they've created, and their gear allows me to hunt free. And above all else, I like to support good people doing good work. If you're interested in upping your mobile hunting game, then head to tetherednation.com. This podcast is brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. Skull Brew Coffee roasts premium single origin coffee, guaranteeing to deliver the freshest coffee directly to your doorstep. The kicker, they're 2% for conservation certified and donate 10% of their proceeds back to organizations who support the interests of our hunting community. So go to skullbrewcoffee.com and pick up one of their 3-killer roasts and fuel your hunt and fill more tags with Skull Brew Coffee. Welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 216. Today I'm joined by Josh Ilderton of the Untamed, and we're talking about ground hunting, big timber, and the mountains of West Virginia. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you are doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. Man, I would love to get my postseason scouting kicked off here, but Mother Nature seems to have a different story in mind for me. I've got about a foot of snow, and I'm looking out the window right now, and it is snowing again. I think we're getting another 5 inches. So I have no clue. Usually, man, I like to kind of kick off my scouting in February and kind of get started, but and it's looking more and more like some of the places I wanted to go up into the mountains is probably going to be more of a March type thing, because I know I got a foot here. We have some friends. My wife has some friends that live up in the area that I'm thinking of going to do some scouting in the mountains, and they got 2 feet. So going to be real hard to look for sheds and real hard to find deer sign underneath 2 foot of snow. But the one thing I did get to do this weekend a little bit in the backyard, which was cool, is I got my tethered 1 sticks. And if you guys are in the market for sticks and trying to check some stuff out, maybe for this upcoming season and not quite sure what you want to get, man, those things are stupid light. Really kind of, when you think about a stick weighing, 1 pound or sub 1 pound, you don't really realize how light that is until you get it in your hand. I have modded sticks that I've used for the past 2 years that I cut down myself. They were lone wolf sticks that I had cut down and shortened them, and then I made a 1 stick, which I used to hunt, I think, once, where I took some of the pieces of the sticks that I had and made a 1 stick for myself, and I thought that thing was pretty light, man. But that thing has nothing on the tethered 1 stick. So I got to play around with that a little bit, put it on a tree in my backyard. Those things are super sweet. The one thing I'm probably going to do is create one to use as a 1 stick for 1 sticking. And then I'm probably going to use a movable aider to use 2 sticks if and when I have a second person with me, potentially, someone filming or whatever the case is. So I think that's probably my plan. But that was just my little taste of hunting this past weekend, as I got to play with some new gear, which was awesome. So if you're thinking about getting some sticks for this year, you're definitely going to want to head over to tetherednation.com and check out their new sticks. But with that, we're going to go ahead and just kind of get started, jump into today's podcast. Got a cool show for you guys today. This gentleman, his name is Josh Ilderton. I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard of him. If you haven't, he is the fellow that is on the Untamed and runs the Untamed YouTube channel. So if you haven't checked that out, I would go to YouTube and search the Untamed. They got killer hunting videos, bear videos, turkey, deer hunting, and a lot of it's done in the mountains of West Virginia. They do some out-of-state stuff as well, but a lot of it's done in the mountains of West Virginia. rugged country. But the thing that when I watched their videos, and the thing that I always kind of dug about Josh is, one, man, I mean, they're houndsmen, and they're just true outdoorsmen. Josh is a hell of a hunter. But the thing that really kind of caught my attention when I was watching them was, you know, I've fooled around a little bit with ground hunting this past year, and the part that kind of maybe that I'm most challenged with is a lot of places that I hunt are thicker. I won't say that they're mountainous, but it's in timber, right? And when you think about ground hunting, a lot of times you'll think of, hunting open spaces, like Kansas, Oklahoma, things like that. And Josh is doing this in the big woods, and so in big wood settings where deer are hard to kind of find and get on in general. Um, and he's hunting from the ground in these areas in West Virginia where you've got where you've got larger mountains, right? And so, I'm always interested in guys that are able to use that style of hunting in those types of terrain, especially big woods, because there's two games you're going to play, and we talk about it a little bit. And I think you've probably heard Chad and I talk about it from our woods hunts. There's two games that you play in the big woods. It's find great terrain features that are going to, move deer through certain areas, but it's not going to happen super often because they've got a lot of ground to cover. And so it's a sit and wait and a patience game potentially. If you're at the right spot, you just need to be there when the right deer is there. Or it's more along the lines of what Josh does, which is he just goes and finds them and puts on the miles, and does true spot and stalks in the big woods. He'll kind of, he breaks it down a little bit when we talk about it. There's really kind of two styles that he takes from a ground hunting perspective. And, it's the spot and stalk style where he finds a deer somewhere and, knows where he's at, or maybe, I think the difference between maybe him and like some of the guys from like maybe like the whitetail adrenaline, like those guys are really looking for a visual and then go after a deer. Josh might just know that there's a deer there, from prior experience or from a past visual he had, maybe trail camera data information or whatever. And that's what he's using, sometimes to go after and get these deer. He may not have had a visual that day. That always helps. But it's true kind of, and then he will kind of put eyes on it and then figure out what his game plan is going to be. So it's hunting in the truest sense of the word. The other kind of option he'll use is like a ground setup ambush point where he knows a deer might be using a particular area and then set up on the ground to try to ambush him to kill him. And so there's a couple different videos that they have on their channel that kind of show how he does both. And so he's just a hell of a hunter, a hell of a good dude, really fun to talk to. And so I thought that this would be a really cool show for you guys. So without further ado, we're going to jump into today's episode with Josh Ilderton. And as always, I want to thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today I've got quite the treat for you. On the line with me, on Skype with me, is a gentleman that a lot of you guys probably are already aware of. I've got Josh on from the Untamed. What's going on, brother? How are you?
Hey, what's up, buddy? How you doing this evening?
Oh, I'm doing okay, man. I'm off the work grind, and thinking about deer hunting, so things are pointing in the right direction in this world.
Well, I understand that. We've slowed down the last couple of weeks and took a break after the new year, and we're starting to get back into that grind of getting more and more content now.
Yeah.
So we took a couple weeks off because our grind through deer hunting and bear season and everything it's just grueling.
Yeah, man. I mean, you guys pump out the content, dude. I mean, it's just it seems, and then soon here, not too long, you're going to be jumping right into turkey season too, right?
Yeah. So we'll leave and take a trip out west to mountain lion hunt.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting ready to leave. We'll probably leave in the next couple of weeks. We'll continue to pump out our bear footage from this past season. Over probably the next 3 or 4 months, we're pretty backlogged because there's just a couple of us and there's only one editor, mm-hmm. Kirk. So he does a really good job to get the videos out. And then, we started 21 off with, we hit 100,000 subscribers on New Year's Day. So it's nice. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
But then we had already committed to putting 2 videos out a week this year. So we're upping our content. So we're really under the gun, but trying to just grow and put more content out there and have some fun.
Yeah, man. I mean, the videos are great, dude. I forget exactly how I stumbled onto you guys. I forget how I was just on YouTube. I think you know what it was. To be truthful, I was looking
Uh-huh.
to make a ghillie jacket, and I was online. I was on YouTube trying to figure out how to because I've had Zach on the show. I know you and Zach are buddies.
Okay.
From
Yeah.
THP.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've had him on a couple times, and we were talking, and we traded some texts and stuff. And it's just that was one of the areas for me this year was to try to get better at ground hunting and stuff like that. Because it's just, I've said to people, I've walked by places that I've seen where I've been like, man, this would be a great spot to kill a good buck, and then there just wasn't any trees like to get into. And I grew up still hunting, most of my life. I never got into an elevated setup until I was probably into my 30s, but I never really hunted from the ground necessarily. It was a lot of like gun hunting and stuff like that. And it's just like a different art form. And so like guys like Zach and, Zach, or I'm sorry, Jared Scheffler, those guys out in Wisconsin, watching what they're doing, like, and how aggressive they are. I was like, man, I got to put this in my repertoire. So I was like, I'm going to try to make me a ghillie jacket. And so I hopped on YouTube and was like, how to make a ghillie jacket. And you popped up. And I was like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm going to watch this guy's video. And dude, you made a killer jacket. And I just didn't have the patience. I ended up buying one, man. I ain't going to lie.
Well, I would recommend. There's just very few companies out there that are offering a good ghillie suit anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I made mine. The one I used in the video is a lightweight one. I wear it in the spring sometimes, or in the early season in the fall. But then I've got a heavy duty one that I've worn in some of the videos. But it's time consuming.
Yeah.
You'll have easy, if you build a good one, you're going to have 12 to 16 hours in it.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's what I was kind of figuring out as I was watching you make this. And I looked at my wife because I always take on these projects, man. Like this past summer, I built a DIY travel trailer out of a 6x10 cargo trailer that my grandma.
Oh yeah, man. I'm getting ready to do.
Are you serious, man? I'll send you some videos. You let me know if there's any information you need, man. Because I did all kind. It's all solar powered, like the whole jam.
Absolutely, I will take any information you got on that.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. But I took that on this summer and built it. It was awesome. Took it to Missouri, and lived out of it for 2 weeks. Actually, me and 2 other people lived out of it because we were doing in Missouri. We were had my buddy Zach with me. He was filming for Tethered. We did like some tethered videos while we were out there, and so 3 of us lived in that tiny trailer for like the better part of 2 weeks. So it was
cool.
Yeah. So it was a squeeze. So I had that project going on, and I was like, I'm going to make this ghillie jacket. And my wife looks at me, and she was like, she's watching me watch the video, and she knows how like impatient I am with certain things. She's like, you don't have the patience for that. And I was like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And she was just like, no, she's like, I want you to go buy one. She's like, because I don't want to hear you complaining about this thing for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I ended up, it's a good one, man. It was a Rancho Safari one was what I ended up settling on. It was probably like the better one that I could find that I thought would do the trick, that would last, wouldn't fall apart. So.
And that's what Kirk wears.
Oh, is it really?
And, yeah. And I think that's about, in my opinion, and we got nothing to do with them, but that's probably about the best ghillie suit in the aftermarket if you're going to buy one that you can find right now.
Yeah.
Most of the guys, like Zach, the one he wears, that guy doesn't make them anymore.
Yeah. I think that was called the Mark Anthony, if I'm not mistaken, because I was looking for one of those.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
And you can find them used sometimes.
Yeah.
On eBay, but they're high.
Yeah, that, and I'm just wondering what kind of another man's funk am I going to be rolling around in? And I put one of the.
It's going to be a lot.
Yeah, that's the truth, man. That's the truth.
But they work.
Yeah,
I'm a firm believer in them. I don't wear mine all the time, but I wear it pretty consistently because they do work.
When did you start really? I guess when did you throw ground? And it might be whenever you were a kid. I don't know. When did you throw ground hunting into your repertoire? Like, how did that kind of come about?
It wasn't when I was a kid, because I'd hunted, my teenage years, and I've always liked to squirrel hunt, and I always tie it back into squirrel hunting because I always hunted from squirrel to squirrel. I never sat under a hickory tree and killed my limit. I'd always just ground hunt from squirrel to squirrel and try to figure it out. But then I went, I got out of hunting for a few years when I was in the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
There just wasn't a lot of opportunities to hunt during that time period. But when I got out of the Marine Corps, I got hooked up with a guy, and we're still buddies today. And that fall, the first year I was out of the service, I got back into bow hunting. Like, I was serious before I went in, like my adolescent years in high school,
Mm-hmm.
but really had no direction. I was just out there hunting and killing does and forkhorns, and I just like killing stuff and eating stuff.
Right.
Just to be honest, I didn't care if it was all of them were trophies to me.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I kind of took a different approach to it when I first got out of service and started hunting with Keith, because we turkey hunted that spring, and he caught in my first longbeard for me. I didn't kill my first longbeard until I think I'd killed a couple of jakes in high school, but he caught in my first longbeard that spring, so we kind of hit it off. And then he always ground hunted. You'd always heard about Keith ground hunting, and so we started glassing and ground hunting. That first fall, I had a shitty pair of binos. They were probably like 6x24s or something stupid.
Right.
Trying to glass a deer, 300-400 yards away. It just looked like a cow out there. But it was an experience, and I stuck with him, and I watched him put a couple stalks on, and then it was mid-November, and I killed my first deer on the ground.
What year was this?
It was in 99.
99. Okay.
Yeah, I got out of service that spring, and I killed my first good deer on the ground that year, and been hunting that way ever since. And I've killed a couple from elevated position, but most of the majority, by far majority, probably 75% of the deer I've killed have been on the ground.
Really?
Yeah.
So what, for you at least, what is it? I don't want to say what's the trick, right? Because it's not a trick. But what, in your opinion, what are the most critical aspects of having successful ground hunts?
Knowledge of the terrain,
mm-hmm.
being able to use the terrain to your advantage as much as possible,
mm-hmm.
to be able to move. Or if you're going to move on a deer, there are two different types of ground hunting, in my opinion. You're either going to do a true spot and stalk, or you're going to play ambush with them.
Right. Which ambush, I'm assuming, would be similar to how you would set up like a saddle or whatever at a point where you want to intercept, but you're doing it from the ground and concealing yourself on the ground. Is that what you're?
Well, but it's more real time. It's not like
right.
We'll go ambush this deer because I watched him for a couple of days. It's more like I see the deer right now, and I kind of know the area, or if I don't, I look at the topo and I go, man, I think this deer is going to go this direction
mm-hmm.
today. And you go there and see if you can cut him off.
Right.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't.
Right. Sometimes you eat the bear, sometimes it eats you.
I'm more of a see the deer and go after it.
Right.
No matter what. If I bump him, I just keep on going after him.
Right.
I'll find I bumped deer and they completely left out of my sight, but got back on the deer an hour later.
Right.
By just going to an area that I think he's going to. A lot of people just give up, and you can always stay on them if you just take a little time. And the big thing is knowledge of the terrain, and then, always having the wind at your advantage the best you can.
Right.
I mean, some days it's going to swirl and it's just going to be shitty, and that's the way it is.
Yep.
But, you're not going to, I'm a firm believer in, everybody says, man, you're going to bump that deer out of the county. No, I'm just going to bump that deer around a terrain feature, and he's going to stop running because nothing's coming after him.
Right.
Most of the time, they're not just going to run and run and run.
Right.
You're just going to bump them away for a little bit, and you can get back on them. I really believe that you're not bumping them forever, and So I don't mind if I bump a deer in the area.
Yeah. Especially if
Yeah.
you've got especially if you got some acreage to play with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. It's, cause I think I think where some of that comes in for some folks when they're thinking of that stuff is that, they're thinking of maybe like small agricultural parcels out in the Midwest, or even like smaller private parcels in Pennsylvania or West Virginia or whatever. It's like, yeah, sure. You can't go around bumping a ton of deer if you only got 100 acres. Cause if he runs 200 yards, that might've been 150 yards across the neighbor's line or whatever the case is,
Right. And I understand that.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you're wanting to hunt on the ground, you need to go in knowing you're going to bump deer.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to jump in that water and start hunting from the ground, you need to know from the get go you're going to bump deer. You're going to foul up.
Right.
You're going to make a lot of mistakes. Deer are smarter than us,
right?
Most of the time,
right?
And I've hunted small parcels, but I've always been on the mindset of this. If I bump it and it goes across, it goes across. There's other deer.
Yeah. No, I agree with that 100%.
I don't know if ground hunting is for the person wanting to kill a specific deer. You have to be an opportunist to be a ground hunter, because there's going to be a lot of things happen because you're throwing yourself out there day after day, and you're covering a lot more area on the ground.
Yeah.
That's an advantage of hunting on the ground is learning more terrain and getting out there. And, you're not to focus on a specific deer is probably not the right tactic.
Right. Now, do you most often, are you hunting for, as my one buddy Josh says, my other buddy Josh,
Yeah.
that he kind of refers to it as he hunts like a coyote. He's hunting for opportunity, not necessarily so much a specific deer. He will at times, but how do you kind of cut that? Do you hunt often just for straight opportunity? Do you ever? I know there was recently a hunt, if I'm not mistaken, that you did, and I don't remember if it was last year or if it was this year, that you were actually after a specific deer.
This was this past season was the first year that I've hunted a specific deer, and it didn't work out in to my advantage. But I'm glad that I did it. I won't ever do it again.
Yeah.
But I hunted that deer hard, and I learned a lot. And I never set eyes on him. I set eyes on him in 2019. But I never set eyes on him in 2020. But I had him within 60 yards of me probably half a dozen times, because I got him on a off trail camera.
Right.
And a cell camera. I'm sitting there in a tree, and there it goes off, and there he is. And I said, well, he's over here.
Right.
A couple of times I tried to get down out of the tree and go after him, but it was a little too crunchy.
Right.
But hunting a specific deer takes a different type of hunter, and I commend all the guys that do it.
Oh yeah, man.
Because it's a discipline that I just don't have.
Yeah.
I like to be able to go, and if I get on a buck and I feel good about it, I go after him, I kill him. It's it.
Right.
I like opportunity hunting.
Yeah.
Like your buddy says, I enjoyed hunting that specific deer. It was a monster, but it just didn't work out, and it would probably take a whole lot for me to go through that again.
Right. Yeah.
Commit all my time to that one deer.
Yeah. I've done it once in the past, and it burned me, where I actually had that deer in my, this is back on a family property, and I had watched this deer for 2 years, and I had finally figured out how he was using the property. And I figured out he was bedded on the neighbors, and I knew he was essentially coming through this one kind of pinch point, because he would show up in daylight early season. He would disappear once you hit about
somewhere between October 15th and the 19th. He would just completely disappear. And if you did catch him, you would start to catch him on scrapes, but only at night. And that was it. And then he wouldn't show back up on the property again in daylight until like right after Christmas. And so I ended up setting up for him on this pinch right after Christmas. Actually, it was the day after because our late season comes in the day after Christmas. And on a whim, it was like, I think he's probably going to use this pinch point. Well, sure enough, he did. Only he came down too far below the ridge for me to get a shot at him, right? And so I ended up hunting that deer 3 more days, and I saw him. I hunted 4 days for him, and I saw him a total of 3 times, 3 different times, 3 different days I saw him. And every time he would just be 20 yards too far up the ridge, 20 yards too far down the ridge. You know what I mean? Just enough out of reach. And so I didn't kill him that year, and I glassed him in the summer the following year. And I told my father-in-law, I was like, I'm going to kill that deer opening day because I was watching the weather. And I was like, man, we got a bluebird day, high pressure, cold front coming through. I was like, this is money. It's setting up for me. And so I went and I set up to catch him there, and he showed up but he was with a bachelor group. And there was one deer that got down below my setup and caught just a whiff of me. Didn't blow out. You know how they'll get stiff-legged and just kind of back up? Yeah. He stiff-legged and backed up, and that deer I was trying to kill saw him and just read the tea leaves, and he just turned around. He was behind a piece of brush. I needed 2 more steps, and it was a 20-yard shot. And that was it. I never saw him again, and my buddy killed him in gun season. And so it was after that hunt where I was like, I spent the better part of like a year and the previous year chasing him, trying to figure him out. I was like, and that was actually when I started hunting public land, was after that, because I knew for 2 years where that deer was at. I just couldn't go kill him.
Right. That's what, excuse me. When you give up that much time, and like the deer I was hunting got killed too. He got killed while I was in Missouri this year. Mm-hmm. And so you know how after a deer gets killed, then all kinds of
pictures. Everybody knows where he's at. Yeah.
Everybody's like, I had pictures of him here, Well, I was telling Zach when we were talking about it, I was like, I look at all the days, all the pictures that everybody sent me since the deer was killed, and the days that I was in the stand, it was a wasted hunt, probably 65% of the time that I was there.
Yeah. Yeah. And how many other bucks could you run into during that time, right?
Well, where I'm going to be completely honest with you, Clint. I mean, where I was hunting, there are not very many deer. I mean, there was a stretch of 9 days where I hunted and never saw a deer.
Yeah.
I know deer there, but
right.
9 days didn't see a deer. I mean, it's psychologically just deflated.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, that's the one part. I mean, because I definitely want to talk about the terrain and stuff you're hunting, because you're hunting big timber, and we were talking a little bit offline before we started some areas that we hunt or whatever. And there's a place that I hunt that you're familiar with, and that's big timber, and just rugged country. And I feel your pain. I think that particular area I've hunted a total of 17 days, not all in one season. Like one year, I think it was 10 days straight. And then this past year I was in that general area and was there. I think I was there for 7. And all 17 of those hunts, these are all day hunts. Some of them I'm moving, some of them I'm still hunting, some of them sitting all day, dark to dark. I saw 4 deer in those 17 hunts.
Yeah. I mean, that, well, for one, that says how committed you are.
Or not real bright, one or the other.
Oh, no, I mean, I've been there.
Right.
But it's hard to stay in the game when that's happening. I mean, in 2019, I said it was probably one of the coldest spells in Ohio for weather. And I think we had hung for 8 days straight, daylight to dark. I mean, hanging in our saddles and kind of bouncing around.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw a few deer in the distance and stuff, and we were hunting some ag. And then, like, it was either the 8th or 9th day that I had a 15-second window at a mid-160s buck at 14 yards, and I blew it. So I hunted those 8 days of just terrible weather, just draining for 15 seconds, and I screwed it up, and it's just like, good God, man.
Yeah.
It's just a terrible ride home.
Yeah. No, I hear you, man.
So, I mean, that's part of it. And, but I like hunting. Where we hunt, it is tough. I mean, it's so big. All the habitat's the same. So it's patterning a buck where we hunt. I'm not saying it's impossible, but food sources and terrain, when you get towards the Midwest, I mean, Missouri was the first time I hunted out there this year. It was totally different than what I'm used to hunting.
Yeah.
But a buck could be, hunting the timber where we hunt, Clint. You might hunt on a beautiful white oak point today and see 15 deer in the exact same wind, same conditions, same pressures and everything. You might not see a deer the next 5 days.
Yeah.
Because they're just over on the other point.
Right.
That's just what they do.
Yeah.
The habitat's all the same, the food's all the same. There's nothing, and it's so vast.
Yeah, they're almost nomadic, is what I've kind of said.
That's what we say it all the time. Where we hunt, the deer are nomadic.
Yeah, it's like that spot that that we were talking about offline. Yeah. That's exactly how that place hunts, and it'll drive a man crazy. Because you could do all the scouting you want. I've spent days there walking and running ridges, and they're not so much ridges as they are spine backs down there, but
right,
it's shed hunting, finding beds, and it's just like we've only ever found a handful of spots that, and when I say consistently, I use air quotes because it's not consistently compared to like what people would maybe experience around ag or whatever, that right. You'll consistently get deer, which means we've run enough trail cameras there over the course of the past several years that we've kind of found a couple spots that get frequented during very specific times of the year, where right. It'll be like this 4-day window. There's this 6-year-old buck that has lived here for the past 3 years. He's going to hit that scrape between November 10th and the 14th. You know what I mean? It's just, he'll do it at least once in daylight in that 4-day window. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But other than that, there might not be a deer on a trail camera you have there the other 361 days out of the year.
It's pretty sporadic.
Yeah. It's just, it's the craziest thing. The only thing I'm curious, this is a question I wanted to ask you just with your experience in that country is, what we've kind of found over time, and we've run a ton of trail cameras down. A buddy of mine that I hunt this general area with owns a trail camera company. And so we have piles of them out. Right. And so he's hunted it longer than I have. So he has mountains of trail camera data that he's looked at over years and correlating with like wind speeds and all kinds of stuff. I basically look at it and go, all right, this deer's in this area. Here's like the sign. Here's the terrain. Right? He goes another level than me. But what we've found over time, because I used to be, used to hunt very obvious terrain features. And I got away from it, especially in high pressure areas like Pennsylvania, because those are going to attract people. And so I just kind of move away from them because I know people are going to be there. Right. When you get into these big kind of wood settings and you have to get back a mile and a half to wherever you're going or whatever, it's like some of those big terrain features that are really obvious you usually pass by. It's like you can still set up on those, like say like a big saddle or something like that. Right. But what I started seeing and what we saw with trail cameras was that you might get deer even in the off the beaten path saddles. We might get some bucks if there's a scrape there hitting that scrape, but it's probably going to be at night. The only scrapes that we found any kind of success with and saw consistent deer movement was getting down in lower elevations, getting off the top third actually, and kind of finding benches that were running lower and that they were using those benches. And if you could find a couple benches that converged somewhere and kind of started tying ridges together, those were the spots that you wanted to focus on. That's where we would see the movement. Do you see similar things or do you see something different where you're at?
Definitely the past 2 years, that's been the case, is that because we hunt big timber, but then we also we hunt a lot of reclaimed mine lands.
Okay, yeah.
In West Virginia. And this year with the mass crop that hit, the deer didn't hardly get up on top until rut, and they were chasing does in that open, not open country, but that brushy reclaimed mine country.
Yeah.
So there was hardly any deer on top, and there was very few deer in the top third like there normally is, but the bottom third to the halfway up the mountain, old skid roads, where they've logged, and there's all kinds of prospecting roads in southern West Virginia where they've gone through and prospected the coal seams. Those roads is where we found all the deer the last 2 years. Of course, I killed one on the ground up on top this year, but he was chasing.
Right.
But Kurt and several other guys that we hunt with in our group, all the deer that were killed or seen were way lower on the mountain than what we're all used to. And it's told me that I'm going to probably hunt lower than what I have before, because I've always been the guy that hangs off. Either I'll be in a saddle, I'll be on a finger point, or I'll be right off the saddle on one side or the other, trying to catch a couple of them coming through, where they tie together. Because I always tried to stay up high, because when you get down in the lower elevations down here in the mountains, hell, if it says it's an east wind or a southwest wind, you can take that and put it in a garbage bag, and it's not going to be a southwest wind,
right? Yeah,
it's going to be a north wind. Then it might blow south, then it might blow west or east.
Yeah,
it's going to sit there and swirl on you, and that's just the way it is. And so it makes it tougher to hunt
for sure.
Lower elevation. So I've always tended to stay up high so I can stay above the changing winds.
Yeah. No, I typically have done the same, and this is the one spot. That's the one area where I've kind of had to throw, I don't want to say caution into the wind, but I've had to kind of risk it for the biscuit, so to speak, a little bit more often, just because I knew I wasn't going to hunting high, just wasn't going to work. Now, I sit here and I say that, and there was one spot that I was hunting this year, and it was the one saddle that I would hunt. And actually, don't even call it a saddle. So these two benches come together and kind of tie this ridge system together, right? Every year there was one particular deer that we've knew of for I want to say this is the third year we knew of this deer. And last year he hit it like clockwork. I was in Iowa last year, so I didn't hunt this spot or the year prior in 2019. And that year he was probably mid 160s. And so he's hit the same scrape in the same 3-day window for 3 years straight. Right. And so I was like, this year I'm going to be there. I'm going to be waiting for him. You know what I mean? I was like, and I'm going to kill him, and we got pictures of him, and he hit that scrape early in the year like he usually does. And then he, should come back in November during that time frame that he's supposed to. I think it was like the 13th through the 16th. He likes to hit that. And this year he was probably, he was borderline 180, probably. Like he was a true giant, and never showed. But the last day that I was there, it was all rainy. I was all set up, and I got in and I didn't see any deer for like a couple days. And then I got into my setup, and it was super foggy, and all of a sudden I hear this deer blow around this ridge. So it's like I was in this kind of pinch where these two benches came together, and then there was a big cut that kind of came around the side of this ridge, right? And then on the other side there was like a big steep kind of ridge point that goes up to where the logging trail was, or the old logging road was, that came down that ridge. And that deer blew out of there, and I'm like, man, there's no way she could smell me. There's so much fog. There's no way she could see me. My wind was solid. And then all of a sudden I heard a big grunt up on that ridge. And so I immediately thought to myself, I was like, man, what crazy dude walked back here right beside me, because this place is like, to get into that spot was like 1.8 miles.
Yeah.
Like, who else is crazy enough to walk back here? I was like, they would have had to beat me in. You know, I was like, I can't believe that someone would have done that. Well, then the grunt moved. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And so I ended up having to get out to leave to end up driving back to Pennsylvania. And I jumped a bedded deer along that logging trail up top where I heard that grunt come from. So he might have been making his way. It was one of those, you know how when you hear one of those grunts where you're like, yeah, that ain't a young or a small deer.
That ain't Spike.
Yeah. You know, and so I convinced myself it was a guy. And when I walked out, I jumped whatever it was. And it was just, when he busted out of that brush, it was heavy hoofed and loud. And I knew right then I probably screwed up.
I mean, everybody screws up though.
Yeah. That's
I mean, it just sucks.
Yeah. Especially a place like that where you put all that time in and you ain't going to see a lot of deer to begin with.
And then, you know, that's probably one of those occasions that it does matter that you bump that deer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Because of the pressure within that area.
Mm-hmm.
That deer probably got bumped and he probably won't be back to that area.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're just so nomadic. It's like that was probably the one day he was going to be there in the next however many months, and that was it.
That's right. I mean, you know, that specific deer I was hunting, and I'll shoot you pictures of it when we get off. But I mean, he was just, you know, Boone and Crockett 8-point.
Yeah. Dude, oh my goodness, dude.
And you know, I hunted pretty much his. I don't know if I was in his bedroom some days, but I was in his house. You know, some days I probably wasn't in his bedroom. I was in his kitchen or his family room or something. But, you know, after that deer got killed, and I hadn't seen a whole lot of deer where I was hunting him. But once I figured out when he got killed, I kept all my cameras up there in that area. And there was so many deer for a 2-week period.
Really?
That rolled in there up high.
Bucks or just deer in general?
No. Shooters.
Shooters, yeah.
You know, Pope and Young. You know, shooters for me are, depending on how I'm feeling that day, are 120 inches and bigger.
Yeah, I'm same.
Yep. You know, I can kill 100-inch deer. I don't, you know, it really don't matter to me. It just depends on what I did that morning, you know.
Yep.
But I mean, couple big deer, you know, 150s, but they were just, that's one thing I did learn. I mean, I will hunt that area again next year because for a 2-week period from like the 10th or 11th November to like right after Thanksgiving, I mean, there was just a constant flow of bucks running that ridge line and the 2 saddles that I hunted because it was just the same ridge system. It's not even a ridge, it's kind of just a long point, but it had a couple saddles in it. They were just running that point scent checking constantly all day long. And it was like 2 weeks straight that there wasn't a day that went by that I didn't get a deer on camera.
Do you think, are you supposing that guy just kept everyone run out of there? He was the king of the...
I absolutely think that he did not let anybody around.
Yeah.
He kept the does. There was like 6 does on that point. He kept them corralled up. And, you know, he would stay there. Now, he would leave if other does up on that area came into heat, but he was the first one. He would stay right there with those ones on that same point system where I was hunting. And he'd stay right with them most of the time.
How big do you think, based on like the trail cameras and stuff that you had out and everyone coming out of the woodwork saying, I saw that deer and could have killed him, you know, how big do you think his area was, his range?
I think Zach and I talked about this, and I drew a circle, a radius, and he was probably, as the crow flies down there, probably within 1.25 miles all the way around, which is huge.
Jeez. How old was he? Did you guess?
I had him since 16. I got him in 2016, and I found him while I was bear hunting. which is the greatest time scouting that you can find. You know, when you're hound hunting, I mean, you cover a lot of ground and
Right.
find a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
And I ran across some sign bear hunting and stuck a camera up and found him. He was I would suspect he was probably 2 or 3 years old.
So he's probably about 7 then, roughly.
Yeah, he was 7.5 years old. I mean, I thought last year in 2019 was like his big year because he was probably a 160-inch 8-point, but he was perfectly symmetrical, just heavy. And then I knew he lived because I saw him just a couple days. I had that deer killed that year, and I saw him just a couple of days before season went out in 19. And a big mature doe busted me.
Oh man!
And but then I was like, man, I wonder if he survived. So I put a bunch of cameras up there this summer, and I didn't got any pictures at all. August 23rd, I got my first picture of him. I was like, holy shit! I mean, just and in velvet. I mean, he just looked god awful.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, that puts the extra mass on him. Even he's already heavy horned.
So I started from that day forward. I said, "Hey, man, that's the only thing I'm going to concentrate on." And and that's what I did. And I got hundreds and hundreds of pictures of him this year. But I thought, I mean, he just blew up. I mean, I've heard a couple different scores. I heard that he scored 177. I heard he scored 174. I mean, I know he's a god awful giant. I heard he scored 169. I mean, there's not much difference in an 8-point that's 169 and 8-point that's 174.
Yeah. I mean, that's just god awful big. Any way you cut that, you know what I mean?
So, but it is what it is. I mean, he was a stud, and But I would say he was 7.5 years old.
Yeah, I think the one cool thing about at least for me, there was there was one deer in Iowa that I chased. No, I went out there and freestyle hunted I was out there for 2 weeks, and I didn't scout the piece. I hunted it at all. And I went out and just went out and figured it out. And I ended up missing like a mid 140s 8-point on like the 6th day that I was there. And I don't know, we're from a similar area of the country, so we might be alike in this way. So after I missed him, I got pissed off, and I said, I'm going to go find him and I'm going to kill him. And my buddy who lives out there, he was like, dude, he's like, you're crazy, man. He's like, it's the rut. He's like, you'll never see him again, And sure enough, like 2 days later, I found him. And story goes, people heard me tell this story already on the podcast, but I missed him again at like 28 yards. Yeah. I had 4 encounters with that deer. I found him 4 different times. Just kept like reading his sign, finding him. I ended up killing a deer on the last trip. Or I'm sorry, on the last day of the hunt, and I ended up killing a good buck on the last day.
Okay.
But I say that to say, chasing that one deer and kind of living with him in his world, because he had me. Like I was in his world. It was all, he was just stringing me along, It was like taking a master's class in hunting whitetails, watching a mature deer that was like 4.5, 5 years old, just do his thing, have that many close encounters with him to where I got to watch him with some does, watch him by himself, and I learned so much from that one deer, even though it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to turn out. It's like, I still think back to that deer, and I'm thankful that I had that chase with him, because I was still playing checkers in my hunting and he was playing chess. And he was the deer that actually taught me how to play chess in the whitetail woods. And I'm just curious for you chasing that deer, even though it didn't end the way you want, and I'm the same way as you. It's like, I'm probably not going to chase another single deer again, because I just prefer to kind of go out and try to find something fun to hunt and fun to kill. But when you look back on it, is there anything specifically that you walk away with and you're like, man, that deer taught me this lesson that you'll kind of take from here forward?
He taught me not to do what I did.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't. I wish you mentioned your buddy that has the cameras and he keeps the data and pictures on in wind conditions, and probably takes what pressures are when the pictures are taken. He probably got, if he's getting that type of data. I wish I would have done that with this deer.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if I would have been keeping that data, because I mean, like I said, I have hundreds and hundreds of pictures of him, daylight, dark. I wish I would have put certain wind conditions where he was at times of the day and kept a log of that, because I think that me having that knowledge would have got me closer to killing that deer.
Right.
And then the other thing is I hunted that deer till November 1st. And after that, it's not like we're in the business, but like doing what we do with YouTube, I mean, we got to have content.
Yeah.
So I was committed to hunting that deer till November 1st. And I was like, man, after November 1st, we got to get. It's hard to put. It's hard to have a video of me sitting in a saddle for 9 days and not seeing a deer.
Right.
that's a wasted 9 days, in my opinion, of something happening. Yeah, Pete, you could probably do a short clip on that. Say, hey, Josh, sat for 9 days, never saw a deer, but
right,
it's not good content.
Right. Yeah.
The other thing is when you're committed to hunting that deer, I decommitted November 1st.
Yep.
November 3rd, I killed a deer on the ground. Well, you're only allowed one buck where we're hunting.
Right.
So that put me out of the game. Well, I think it was 13 days later that buck got killed because, I was convinced that deer was going to live until this year.
Right.
And I would have another opportunity at him this year.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, I probably won't hunt deer like that again. I mean, I tried to go on that deer on the ground in the big timber. I mean, I hunt on the ground in timber too if the situation is right. I mean, if it's moist, if it's raining, the wind's right. I mean, I'm hunting on the ground. I'm not getting in elevated positions very much. I mean,
yeah,
I saw him twice on the ground in 19. Couldn't close the deal. But I don't know. I don't think I could have got any more aggressive than what I did because, I feel like if I would have got any more aggressive, that I wouldn't even had a chance to say that, hey, I got him on a trail camera 60 yards from me, because if I'd have went in a little bit further, I feel like I would have bumped him out because, the terrain plays such a big part where I'm hunting. I mean, when I say I'm hunting on a ridge or a point, I mean, I'm hunting on something that's 10 yards wide.
Right. Yeah.
It falls off the face of the earth on both sides.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's really steep terrain. The elevations aren't real high compared to, out west or anything, but, it's just straight up and down terrible terrain. And if you push over that edge too far, you're going to screw yourself with wind. Yeah. I mean, that's the flat facts.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to convince yourself to go in there knowing you're probably going to screw up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, that terrain is definitely, you have to have a high acceptance of failure.
Yeah.
To hunt that area. Just, that's the one thing that I kind of came with the amount of years, I've had the opportunity of hunting that similar terrain. Which is why my buddy and I like to hunt together, because we're the same. It's like we like to be aggressive, we like to move, and if I screw it up today, I'm just going to get back after it tomorrow, and I'll figure it out. And if you don't have that, there's one of two types of people, in my opinion, that can hunt that terrain. You have to either have a high threshold for failure and know that that's going to be a lot of it, right? Or you have to be really, really content sitting for 10 days in a spot.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And not move, because it's just either going out and finding it and just knowing you're going to screw it up, or sitting there and waiting for it to come to you. Because And it's a matter of time, and deer will be there. It's just a matter of, are you there when they're there or not?
That's right.
You know,
I tell everybody that, I'm not the best deer hunter out there. Don't want to be, don't claim to be. But what I do is when it's deer season is I'm out there hunting. Every opportunity that I get, every chance that I have to be out there, I'm out there. Rain, snow, shine. I'm glassing. I'm doing something. And I think that increase, the more opportunity you give yourself, your odds are better at killing something.
yeah, 100%.
It's more of a work ethic than it is. I mean, yeah, you got to have some sort of skill set, but you also can't roll over in bed when the alarm clock goes off and go, man, I don't want to hunt today. Or,
Right.
I'm going to hug up to this warm leg for a couple more hours.
Yeah.
You got to have the mindset that, you're going to go. And then after 2 hours of daylight and you're not seeing a deer or nothing, and they're right there and you're not seeing it. And it's that mindset of staying right there and staying behind the glass for 2 or 3, 4 more hours.
Yeah.
And just sitting there and glassing instead of walking back to the truck and going to get a sausage biscuit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And coming back that evening. It's that commitment of staying out there, and whether you just don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And if you ain't there, then it definitely ain't going to happen.
I mean, how many times do you hear, when guys are out on these trips or their home state or their backyard or whatever it is, that it's like nothing was happening, and all of a sudden it's like at the snap of a finger, it's like,
yeah,
it all happened, and it was 3 weeks of hunting and 10 seconds of insanity. It's like you hear it all the time, and that's one of the things that kind of, I guess, more further kind of instilled that in me, because I like to grind, I like to get after it, I like to move, but it was really taking that trip to Iowa, because that was a solo trip. It was me by myself for 16 days. So I didn't have anything else to do but get up and hunt every day from dark to dark, and didn't know the area. So I just moved around a lot. And then it was the same thing this year in Missouri, where it's like when you went out, you were just out and you were just moving from place to place to place, trying to figure out, because the whole Missouri hunt was a freelance hunt this year too. So it was just like, and I sometimes feel, I was talking to a buddy of mine about this, who I have a lot of respect for as a hunter. And he's like, he's kind of making fun of me. He's like, man, you get on way more deer out of state when you don't know what the hell you're doing or what you're walking into. He's like, than you do, like, in your own backyard, And I was like, I know. I was like, I don't know what it is. And he's like, I think you outthink yourself too much. He's like,
you're probably overthinking it when you're home.
Yeah, exactly. Because he's like, dude, we went to that Missouri, and we hunted 3 different pieces of public. All were an hour and a half away from each other. And the one spot was this big river bottom, and we hunted it for 2.5 days. And I saw like 3 good bucks that I would have shot the second day. I was on the ground, actually, because every tree in that spot had poison all over it, so I couldn't climb any of them. So I was on the ground behind some brush. And then we left and went about an hour and a half west, because some pressure rolled into that spot. And this was all big. When I say big, not big, but like for that area, just rolling ridges and just some of the most beautiful country you'd ever see. And the second day I had 2 bucks. One was a shooter, and they were just about 20 yards out of range, and I just couldn't get a shot. Came in with a doe. Pressure rolled in, left that spot, was at a new place. And the second day I got run over on the ground. I was still hunting, got run over. I won probably about a 150, ran right at me on a doe. I could have reached out and rodeoed him if I would have had the time to think about it. And then I actually still hunted back to him, kind of what you were talking about. He didn't bump that far on that doe. Like, he was just chased that doe to that next finger of timber.
Right.
So we still hunted over to there, and then got to about 40 yards, and we both saw each other at the same time, and he was out. And I set up the next morning in between a cedar thicket, ended up hitting one and ended up losing it, or whatever it was, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. And but that was 3 pieces of public, 3 shot opportunities, and I never knew a stitch of anything. You couldn't run cameras on any of that property or anything like that. And just hunting super free. Do you kind of get that same feeling, like whenever you're just kind of out there just being a predator. That's the only thing I can kind of equate it to. It's like you're truly hunting for the next opportunity.
Well, I did not. I mean, but we were in Missouri too this year, and it was the first time for me hunting, the Midwest.
Mhm.
And I really struggled because I felt like that I was opposite of you. I was overthinking the new area rather than just doing what I do back here, because I really think that hunting whitetails is a lot harder in the mountain bucks in Pennsylvania, West Virginia,
100% agree.
I think it's way, way tougher to kill a mature buck here than it is in other areas of the country.
Yep, totally agree.
And I'm not taking anything away from anybody, but I went out there and hunted my tail off, and I didn't find the deer until the evening of the 5th day. But once I found the deer, I was in the deer.
Right. Yep.
But then my last 2 days out there, it was 40 and 50 mile an hour winds, and it got up to 70, 75 degrees.
Yeah.
And we ended up coming home. Now, do I feel like I can go back to that area on public this fall? Yeah, I think it was that type of spot that I'll be back in the deer the first day.
Yeah.
Kirk found deer. The first day he was there, but he took a real risk by crossing the river, which could have been good or bad when he crossed, but
right,
the risk was worth the reward because he was in bucks, but he couldn't. My opinion, I think that the thermals out there and the wind is what kept on fouling him up, because he couldn't get a handle on it. And I honestly think it fouled me up too first couple of days, because I mean I was in some areas that I felt like were just natural funnels, and the deer sign, and I'm not talking about rubs or scrapes, I'm talking about this travel sign. It was there, but I didn't see any deer. I mean, I saw a couple of does,
right,
but I didn't see deer like I was expecting to see.
Right.
I think it was because of the rolling hills. It was a little different than what I'm used to hunting, and I don't know. I didn't do any good out there. I mean, I feel like I learned a lot,
right,
but it is. I think I overthought it too much, because it should be much easier hunting.
Right.
I mean, whitetail hunting for mature deer is not going to be easy anywhere you go.
Right.
I'm not discounting that.
Yeah.
But it's definitely different out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's they only have but so many places to be out there because of how everything's broken up. You know what I mean? Even if you're on a decent sized chunk, there's agriculture here. This is tillable land here. There's a finger of timber here. There's a body of water here. It's like they've only got but so many places they can be. And you're right. Like the wind is different. Like the hardest part for me, and I had a little bit of, training, if you will, prior, because a lot of what I live in Eastern PA. I grew up in Western PA. So it's like I grew up hunting hills and stuff like that. Now I live in Eastern PA, whereas a lot of what I hunt is swamps, near bodies of water, flat, and so, but it's still hard for me. Like I still prefer that mountain in that terrain because I understand and I can see how deer will move and use it, and the hardest part for me going out to places like the first spot where you're at, like it took me a hot minute to figure it out because it was just this big river bottom. It was just, there's one small ridge. And when you come down off of that, most of that ground was just flat to the river. And that was it, and so trying to look at it and figure out where the hell anything was going to be, it's like, you almost have to hunt it like you're hunting a swamp, where it's like, you're really just looking for edges and allowing those to almost be your terrain features and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And that was kind of how I figured it out. And then I found something that felt familiar, which was I found like an old logging road that they had cut in. There wasn't a logging road. It was actually an access road to get equipment in, I think, to some of those bean fields that were around there. And when I found that, I found a bunch of scrapes with a bunch of side cover. And then I was like, Yahtzee, here we go. I was like, this feels familiar. I know how to hunt this,
Yeah.
And that was when we started finding deer and stuff like that. But you're right, man. It's like when you go to places like that is just completely different from mountain terrain. It takes a minute just for your brain to flip to understand like what your approach needs to be,
Yeah. I had looked on, I was looking on, my phone, and the last couple of days I'd found some transition lines between the terrain, and I stayed offset of those probably. One morning I went in blind to a transition line on this point, and I saw the most deer I saw that morning. And I stayed about 50 yards off of that transition line where the transition kind of fed up over a ridge, and I stayed below the ridge. And of course, you're talking about a ridge. The only difference in elevation between the ridge and the river and the creek bottom is maybe 100 feet.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's pretty flat. But I got midway between the creek bottom and that transition line. All it was a thicket. It was old clear cut. But those deer fed, funneled through between that thicket and the creek bottom. And I was like, man, we got into the deer. And then I moved a little bit further midday, and that was the evening that I found the big sign that I wanted to end up jumping a big shooter, because I was hunting on the ground that evening.
Right.
Just to move. And like you said, just continuously just trying to learn. And it got to a point in the hunt where I was like, man, we've got to make something happen. So I'm being ultra aggressive. And I bumped a big buck that evening. Right. And I was like, man, I'm in him now.
Right.
And then, the weather didn't work out. It is what it is. I mean, that's hunting. It's not called killing.
Yes. Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. So it was definitely a learning experience. Where we were hunting in Missouri, they were like, I had this picture in my head, Clint, going out to Missouri, of kind of like where I've hunted in Western Ohio, kind of having the ag, the windrows of trees, the hedgerows, some timber, some, but where we hunted in Missouri, it was all big timber. It was nothing but river bottoms, creek bottoms, and timber. There was no ag at all.
Okay.
None around us. I mean, the day we got out there wasn't, season was in, but I drove around because we were bow hunting during gun season.
Okay. All right. So you guys were out there, that would have been like what, the second week in November?
The 14th through the 21st.
14th. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I left like, I think the 14th, I want to say I left, or the 8th, maybe I left Missouri.
Well, I feel like that was I feel like we were 6 to 10 days late.
Yeah.
But I drove all around where that public we were going to be hunting, and found nothing but pasture fields and cows. There was no ag. It was just all pasture.
Yeah.
So there was no ag whatsoever. So it was nothing but big timber. So I was a little bit taken back by that also, that you couldn't kind of key in.
Yeah.
And I hadn't done a lot of e-scouting. I'd looked at it, and I picked a couple areas. When we first got there, I ran through and did some speed scouting. So it was definitely a great learning experience.
Yeah.
I feel like I'll have success out there, because I'm definitely going to go back. I enjoyed it.
Oh, for sure.
And I might even go back to that same area. But when you get in doing what we do, and you podcasting and doing videos, and you meet we became good buddies with the guys at THP, and they're just a freaking huge help.
Yeah.
And a wealth of information.
Yeah.
So that those guys, with the help that they can give, I mean, that I wouldn't have otherwise. Yeah. I mean, I feel real confident about going out there. And then hopefully draw I will permit here in a couple of years.
There you go. That's what I like to hear. It's Next year for me, I think is Kansas next year. So that's why I'm really trying to brush up on my ground game because
Yeah.
it's going to be a lot of ground game out there. And then I'll get a point this year and I should be able to draw Iowa again in like another year after this. So like 2022, I think I'll be able to draw Iowa again. But
now Kansas is over the counter, correct?
yeah, I mean, last year, I think anyone who wanted one got one. You know, they say if you have a point, you're pretty much guaranteed to get it. So I knew I wanted to go this year because I was doing Missouri last year. So I just bought a point last year. So I knew for sure I'd be able to go. So, yeah, but I'm not sure where I'm going to go yet. I've still been e-scouting. It's up in the air whether or not I was hoping to maybe go out and do a turkey hunt so I could do a turkey hunt and scout this spring. But it may be another one of those flying blind kind of deals where I just go out and figure it out.
See, I mean, I listen to several podcasts and there's a lot of good information on e-scouting, but I think it's deceiving. E-scouting is because you don't know if there's been loggers in there. You don't know if it's been clear cutted. You don't know. I mean, so you might, you're running into a place and you're forever on. What I'm saying is I like going into an area blind and just figuring it out.
Yeah.
I like to see the contour lines, but I don't like putting it on satellite, seeing the terrain. I mean, seeing
because it could be different, man.
Because once you get out there, you're like, man, this wasn't a pond.
This hedgerow wasn't here before. Exactly, man. Exactly. Well, that's the one thing, I like about, I think it's Ohio, like some of the places I've been, because I forget what it's called, but the state has to manage state land for profit. And so they'll be cutting, you know what I mean? And so there's a couple different places that I've hunted out there that actually, they do a really good job of updating their map on their website for what's being cut and when, especially in big timber. I mean, that's what I'll focus on is just where the new cuts at that are roughly 2 years old, map those out. And if it's a brand new one, like last year, the one spot, there was a brand new cut. We hung some cameras, got some decent deer on it, but we knew this wasn't the year for it. It's going to be next year. Yeah, exactly. The next year and the year after, it's going to be prime. And so we just kind of map those out as well and just follow those cuts around, anytime there's a new cut. And, if there's an agency that's doing a good job of keeping updated with their maps, it can be a really good plan, especially for out of state hunting, and just kind of follow those.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
that's a tough area to hunt, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of what I hunt.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was stoked to have you on, man. Well, not only because you're from West Virginia, and I grew up close to West Virginia. I didn't live far from there.
That was that type of hunting. I mean, and I hunt east of there, and it's a little bit more open, like it is where we hunt in West Virginia, and where I really like glassing.
I was going to ask you, man, like, because you hunt so much from the ground, I think one of the things that intimidates me the most about ground hunting, especially where I live in Pennsylvania, is there's not a lot of wide open space. And when I think of ground hunting, I think of like Kansas and, stuff like that, where I can glass something up and then go make a move. How are you? I mean,
that's one aspect of it.
Right. But how are you doing that in the timber, man? That's the part that gets me is like
a lower power bino and going extremely slow.
Yeah.
You're glassing from point to point.
Right.
Because you're going to be in the timber. That's the time that you are going to be off the top and you're on an old skid road or prospect road or and you're glassing down and up. And, I always, when you go around a point and then, you always have that bowl between your points, and where it's so steep where we're hunting, it's actually an advantage to hunt on the ground in the timber because where it's so steep, you can glass a lot if you come around a point and you can glass pretty much that whole bowl before you move on to the next point.
Right.
And if you see something, then a lot of times the deer are just moving and you're kind of going to play ambush, or hopefully they're coming across you some way. But
Right.
I talk to people all the time about hunting in the woods, and it all, you just have to slow down. You know, that's the main thing, and then not get lazy, because once you get lazy and say, "Man, I haven't seen a deer all day," and you take that hard step, and and you can ruin everything that you've done for the past 4 or 5 hours of going slow and taking your time and seeing a few deer, and take a bad step, and there goes your opportunity. You just jumped one out of the bed.
Yeah.
Because, your mentality broke down.
Right.
I like it because you can cover a lot of ground, you can get aggressive, and I'm a jittery person anyway. I'm pretty well high wired most of the time, naturally, and just the way I'm made is I like to move and learn. And hunting on the ground, there is no other way to learn except boots on the ground.
Yeah. I think the one thing too is I think with the ground hunting, and I'm not necessarily ground hunting per se. A few times this year I had a big deer that I was hunting in Pennsylvania, hunted him from the ground. Ended up getting on him, actually kicked him out of his bed like right at the beginning of the season. And then there's one of those things where I wasn't going to get hung up on him. I just moved on to I'll go find some more deer, But what it does, or what it's helped me do, just being aggressive and moving, at least, even not even ground hunting, but just moving and being aggressive, is understanding where the deer are at, where the sign is being laid down now. So I think a lot of people get hung up on trying to use I mean, I love to scout, and I'll scout all winter long up into the season. And, if I find a new piece, I'll scout it during the summer. It's like, I'm not one of those guys that just stops scouting at a certain point. If I can get out and scout, I will check cameras or whatever. But a lot of folks will hunt sign where they saw this last October here, or this, rub line here during this time of the year. And when you see that, maybe you saw it postseason scout, it's like, you don't know when that was made, and if you're banking on going back to that spot to hunt it, and you're not sure if it was laid down in October or November, you might be 3 weeks late.
You might be a year late.
It could be a year late. Yeah.
You might be hunting a ghost.
Yeah.
That's why, one, I don't have a whole lot of time. Time is critical for scouting. I don't do a lot of I glass because I enjoy the glass. But I'm hunting for now.
Right.
If I'm in the woods, I scout while I'm hunting.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the only real time information you can get for right then. Like, I don't want to waste my time hunting 3-day, 4-day old sign.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I want to find deer that I'm going to hunt today, this evening.
Yeah.
That
makes sense.
I don't know if that makes sense or not.
No, it totally does, man. Because that's,
and plus I'm moving all the time. I don't know. I'd hate to find a rub that's a week old and the deer's already been killed. And I don't know, it's just another wasted time, and time is something that all of us don't have a lot of.
Yeah. You don't get it back. It's our most precious commodity.
Yeah.
As they say, you know what I mean? Yeah. But speaking of time, man, I know I've kept you here for a little over an hour, like an hour and 15 minutes. I want to be sensitive to your time.
I shouldn't BS with you for everybody.
Buddy, we're going to do it again then, because you made a quote, and I think it's just, I think it was the appropriate kind of thing to end on, just based on this conversation and just maybe where people's mindsets are at just in general in the world. And it was, you said, I'm hunting for now. And I think if people just did that when they're hunting for now, but also apply that to how they live, and that they just live for now,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in those 3 words you mentioned, man. And so I think that's a perfect place to shut her down. What do you think?
Dude, I appreciate you having me on, man. I enjoyed it. We'll have to do it again.
Hell yeah, man. We're definitely going to do it again. Before I let you get out of here, let everyone know where they can find out more about you, where they can find out more about the Untamed and what you guys got going on.
You can check us out on the untamedhunt.com. find us on YouTube at The Untamed and The Untamed at Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. Check those guys out. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
All right, man. Thank you.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And hell, while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Skull Brew Coffee Company, and Maven Optics. And until next time, we'll see y'all.